So here's Sanji. He's front and center in this chapter.
Get the hell out of here, you dirty old bastard. Ah, jeez. Remember to follow me on all the social networks, brothers and sisters. One Piece, Chapter 188, Okama Karate.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and action-packed epic tale of One Piece. Our last chapter, of course, saw, really it was the beginning of a new volume, and we had seen a little bit going on with Vivi making it to the actual, the actual palace, and trying to convince Chaka of some kind of plan that she's going to enact to hopefully, stop the fighting amongst the rebels and, of course, the royal army. And then we saw the battle between Mr. Two and Mr. Two Bon Clay, and Sanji really start to heat up and them start to kind of, go toe-to-toe. Now, the chapter ended off with basically, I mean, as far as the Sanji part of the fight, where they were fairly evenly matched, but then Bon Clay found that Sanji's weakness is that, he loves women, obviously. He was a pervert in that sense, and when he would turn into, Nami or a woman in general, but Nami was what he was using, that it was able to give him an opening to attack Sanji. So that's where things left off. That's kind of where things pick up over here. We see briefly at the beginning, the first couple of pages, we see that Princess Vivi, that her actual plan, and Chaka goes and reiterates it to her, like obviously it happens when you have these breaks. It's really kind of cool because it's almost like watching a show, and then there's like a commercial break, or there's, on next week's episode. And you wind up finding, so it left you hanging in the last one, like, what the hell kind of plan does she have? Because Chaka didn't seem too big on it. Her plan is, according to what Chaka says, to destroy the royal palace. And even some of the, the other subordinates and whatnot are like, whoa, don't listen to her. The king would never allow that, And then Chaka goes and he's thinking about it, and he thinks to what she said about saving the country and this and that. And, the palace is 4,000 years old and everything else, but ultimately it's not about, for her, and at least for her, the royal family, from what I've seen, okay, what I've gathered from Alabasta, it's not about the wealth and riches and the status and the fame. It's about being a good leader and about being a good leader to your countrymen, and of course making sure that they're not killing each other, even if you wind up having to sacrifice a physical thing, obviously the space that you have lived in. So I don't know what that's going to do, but at any rate, Chaka winds up agreeing. And he says, okay, princess, So that's all we see from that. And then the rest of the chapter all focuses very heavily on the fight between Bon Clay and Sanji. And Bon Clay, we wind up seeing for several pages, he is just whipping Sanji's ass all over the place, and we presume that in that break that we have seen, he's also been whipping his ass because he kind of hits him. He turns into Nami, and then boom, he hits him, and he's like, you don't even have enough strength to get up. And Sanji's like, he's thinking there's got to be a weakness, and I know how you. And then he goes and he says, it's okay because I know what you really are on the inside, right? And then all of a sudden, then Bon Clay goes and turns into Nami again, and she's got like on a low cut top, and he's like, oh, it's so hot here. Maybe I should take some clothes off. And Sanji's just like, with like the Who Framed Roger Rabbit type of eyes popping out of his head, and then Bon Clay nails him again, And it was actually kind of cool because Bon Clay, when I saw him at first, he's still not like a super lovable, likable character for me. However, when I first saw him, I was just like, what in the hell is with this guy? But now, between the clone fruit powers that he has, even though he's just kind of unique and different, I guess I'll say, but it is kind of cool to actually see his Okama Karate, or it says in my book, Okama My Way Karate, but just to see that he's obviously a very formidable opponent, even though he looks kind of silly when you see him on the surface. So there's more than meets the eye when you look past, the skin deep. So they go back and forth for a bit, and then Sanji goes and he winds up finding that like all good, I guess you'd say like card players, they all have a tell, and sometimes a tell is like a card player. Like if they have a good hand, they might go like this, or they might touch their nose, or they might smile or smirk a certain way. So Sanji figures out that even though it's a very small window, that basically when he goes to use his Okama My Way Karate, his Okama Karate, that Bon Clay, when he does that, right before he goes to use any type of move from that, he has to transform. He has to be back to himself. And I guess he touches his cheek, his left cheek, or to do that right before he goes into one of his moves. So Sanji goes and starts figuring out and breaking down the timing aspect of it, you know, and actually thinking about, okay, listen, it's a small window, but I know what I can do now because he cannot attack me with his karate while he is Nami. So he winds up, you know, winds up turning the tide for, you know, for the time being, and starts taking Mr. Two Bon Clay and actually being able to fight back and to hit him, you know, and do some damage to him. So it's kind of nice to see the tides, you know, and the battle shift in Sanji's favor. So that, you know, winds up shifting for a couple of pages, and then we wind up getting, you know, Bon Clay over there. He's like, that, whatever, fine, that's true, but it doesn't matter. It's such a small window that you can, and it is true that I can only use my Okama Karate, you know, when I'm actually in the form that I trained in, blah, 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 but what does it matter? And then he changes into a woman again, and is able, Nami again, and is able to nail him. And then he winds up going and using, you know, and it's kind of like his ultimate finishing move, and I forget the exact name of it, you know, the swan something kicks, whatever. But he has on the end of his feet, there's like these swan-looking slippers. That's another thing that to me, it looked goofy when I first saw him because I had no idea. I was like, this guy looks like some sort of weird ballerina. He looks like somebody who escaped the mental institution. You know what I mean? Like, hey, whoa, hey, Bon Clay's off his meds, you know, put him back in the straitjacket and get him on the shock therapy. That's what he looked like to me when I first saw him because, you know, it looks like he's wearing these like goofy slippers. Well, anyway, it turns out he goes to nail Sanji with one of these kicks or whatever, and Sanji's able to move just in time, but he hits the wall behind him, and it busts a hole in the wall, right? And Sanji's like, it went right through a brick wall or a concrete wall with that. What kind of force does he have with those kicks, right? Well, it turns out that, you know, and Bon Clay explains his slippers, and, you know, they're basically these swans, you know, that can become whatever, hard as rock or steel or whatever, you know. And they showed the hole that he punched through, because of such force, there's no cracks around the hole. Normally when you hit something with a lot of force, it may make a crack in a wall, but then there's cracks around it, right? Spider webbing out. This is just like a precise hole. So Bon Clay explains that, you know, because everybody likes to talk about their powers as they're using them, obviously. You know, that's just sort of the mantra of anything that you have going like this. And Bon Clay, you know, goes and he explains about his power and about how, you know, they're like bullets. You know, he goes, look at it as like bullets coming from my feet, except for they're much bigger, you know. So he winds up actually nailing Sanji with one of them, you know. And then he's going around, and it looks like he's kind of going in for the kill, and it looks like Sanji might be down for the count, you know. And then Sanji goes and he, like I said, he figures out the whole timing thing of it, and then thinks about it, and he's like, okay, you know, and he winds up pulling a really cool thing, because right at the end of the chapter, as Bon Clay is about to nail him with this like super move, you know, with his kick or whatever, Sanji is able to dodge, and then as he's coming at him with another one, Sanji goes and he's like, oh, what's that on your face, or what's that on your left cheek? And he knows when he touches his left cheek, he turns back into himself, right, and not Nami or whatever. So he winds up tricking him and getting him to, and he's like, whoa, what? You know, because this guy's a real prima donna, too. You got to look at Mr. 2 as, like, he's a real, like, you know, I mean, he's using, like, these mascara moves on him and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, whatever he may be, a transvestite, whether he's gay or, you know, he's considered to be a homosexual because he's, like, he's man and woman, you know. But when he says the man and woman stuff, I think of, like, a transvestite because, obviously, they, you know, they have both parts, or they were one and now they're another. However that works exactly, I'm not quite sure. I haven't read up on it too much. But the point is that this guy is a real, he's just a real prima donna in the sense that, you know, oh my God, there's something on my face, that type of thing, right? That's what I picture anyway. And so Sanji goes and says that, you know, and he goes and says, oh, there's something on your left cheek. And he goes, oh, really? What? And he turns back into Bon Clay for just, you know, that split second that Sanji needs, because obviously, you know, for some reason, he's thinking with the wrong head. And he cannot get past, you know, the beautiful visage of Nami, even though he knows that, you know, Mr. 2 is actually underneath that. So he winds up going and just nailing him, just, you know, just jacks him up with a kick. And that is how the chapter ends. Now, I don't know. Of course, I haven't read ahead, so I don't know if that's, you know, how the fight ends. I'm assuming that there's going to be a little more to it, because the whole deal with, I know the Chopper and Usopp battle that they had went on for several chapters, and this seems like it was only beginning. So not really quite, you know, not sure what's going to happen next. Not sure if he's knocked out. But ultimately, I guess my chapter question, because that is how the chapter ends over here, my chapter question is, what do you think, you know, about Vivi's plan as far as somehow, you know, tearing down the palace or destroying the palace? I guess that's my real head scratcher on that one, because I'm wrapping my mind around it. I'm thinking, how is that going to go and stop anybody from fighting? You know, they're going to destroy their own palace and be like, hey, look, we're messing our shit up too. Don't fight. you know, because they're the rebels, they're supposed to be like 1 million or 2 strong, and the Royal Army, and I mean, this is, you know, anybody who's ever seen, participated in, watched the History Channel, any of that type of stuff, when you have a huge, large-scale battle going like that, it doesn't stop very easily. So, and especially when you got these Baroque work agents undercover all over the place in the Royal Army, and I'm sure some in the rebels too, they're just trying to incite and inflame things and make them worse. So, but anyway, like I said, my question is, what do you think about Vivi's plan as far as, and what do you think that'll accomplish, you know, them destroying their own palace? So, leave your answer to that question in the comment section down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you think that I deserve it. And, of course, subscribe if you haven't done so already. We'll look forward to catching you in the next one, Nation.
Say, I like boobies, too.
That's it. One more word, you dirty old man, and I'm gonna call the Russian in here to break your goddamn legs. Who has called me? Where is this man?